bright summer morning in 1942, residents of Daly City, California gathered in disbelief as a Navy blimp drifted slowly down from the sky. Its ropes tangled in power lines, its gondola scraped the roof of a quiet neighborhood home. The blimp looked battered but intact. Police and soldiers rushed in. They expected to find a crew in need of help, or bodies after a crash. But when they opened the gondola doors, they found nothing. The two men who had piloted the airship hours earlier were gone. Their parachutes remained, their life raft untouched. Classified Navy documents still in a briefcase. The only thing missing was the crew. This is the mystery of the Ghost Blimp L-8. The United States had been at war for less than a year. On the Pacific coast, tension ran high. Rumors of Japanese submarines prowling the waters kept the Navy on constant alert. Patrol blimps became a crucial defense. Silent, slow-moving, able to hover for hours, they were perfect for spotting oil slicks, periscopes, or enemy vessels. They weren't glamorous, but they were vital. And on August 16, 1942, one of those blimps, Navy Blimp L-8, was preparing for what seemed to be a routine mission. Lieutenant Ernest DeWitt Cody was a steady, capable pilot, 38 years old, married, and father to a young son. He was respected as calm under pressure, the kind of man others trusted with their lives. His co-pilot, Ensign Charles Ellis Adams, was even more extraordinary. He had over 2,200 hours in lighter-than-air craft, making him one of the Navy's most experienced blimp operators. Years earlier, he had been at the Hindenburg disaster, where he personally helped pull survivors from the wreckage. For his bravery, he'd been commended by the German government. These were not novices. They were two of the best men the Navy had for the job. But fate would intervene before they even took off. Originally, the mission called for 3 men. Aviation machinist mate James Riley Hill was assigned as the 3rd crew member. But just before takeoff, Hill was pulled from the flight. The official reason: the morning air was unusually heavy with moisture. The blimp's lift capacity was lower than expected. A 3rd man's weight, they said, might prevent safe flight. Hill stepped aside. Lieutenant Cody and Ensign Adams lifted off alone. That last-minute decision may have saved Hill's life. At 6:03 a.m., Blimp L-8 lifted off from Moffett Field just south of San Francisco. The patrol route was simple: fly west to the Farallon Islands, then loop back along the California coast. For over an hour, everything went as planned. Then at 7:42 a.m., Cody radioed in. They had spotted an oil slick on the ocean surface about 25 miles west of the Farallons. Oil slicks often meant submarines. This was serious. Cody reported they were descending to investigate. That was the last anyone ever heard from them. The blimp's actions were observed by sailors at sea. The fishing trawler Daisy Gray and the Liberty ship Albert Gallatin both reported seeing the L-8 descend low, just 30 feet above the waves. They could clearly make out Cody and Adams inside the gondola. The crew appeared focused, watching the slick. Everything looked normal. Then the blimp suddenly rose. Witnesses described it climbing rapidly up to 2,000 feet. Why the sudden ascent? And more importantly, if something had gone wrong at that moment, both sailors testified that both men were still on board. Back at Moffett Field, time passed. No more radio calls came. The Navy grew uneasy. Patrols were short. L-8 should have checked in by now. Then strange reports began to arrive. The blimp had been spotted drifting over the Golden Gate, then south along the coast. By 10:30 a.m., civilians in San Francisco looked up to see the Navy airship floating silently over Ocean Beach, dipping alarmingly low. It scraped power lines, startling residents. At the Fleischhacker Zoo, zookeepers stopped in their tracks as the blimp passed overhead, sagging but still intact. Finally, around 11:15 a.m., the L-8 made landfall in Daly City. It brushed a hillside, tangled in wires, and settled gently against a house on Bellevue Avenue. It was a landing so soft, so strange, that neighbors recalled it seemed more like the blimp chose to set itself down rather than crash. When police and Navy personnel climbed aboard, they braced for injured airmen, or worse. But inside, the cabin told a different story. Both parachutes were still in their place. The life raft was still aboard, unused. A briefcase of classified documents was left behind. The radio was in working order. The engines, though shut down, were functional. Most chilling of all, the cabin doors were locked open, latched from the outside. How could two men vanish from a perfectly functional blimp without using parachutes or rafts, leaving their equipment and secrets untouched? Cody and Adams were simply gone. When the Navy examined the L-8, they expected answers. Instead, every discovery only deepened the mystery. To this day, no one knows what happened in those missing hours over the Pacific. The Navy wasted no time. A disappearance during wartime was serious, and the men had carried sensitive equipment. An investigation began immediately. The official explanation? An accident. Investigators suggested that while descending to mark the oil slick, one of the men may have leaned out to drop a smoke flare. In doing so, he fell. The second man, attempting to rescue him, also fell overboard. The sudden loss of weight, they argued, caused the blimp to rise rapidly. Unmanned, it then drifted back toward land until it came down in Daly City. It was a neat, tidy theory, but it didn't sit right with many who studied the case. For one thing, sailors on the Daisy Gray and the Albert Gallatin swore they saw both men inside the gondola after the blimp rose from the slick. If they had already fallen, who did those witnesses see? A Pan American Airways pilot added another wrinkle. Later that morning, he spotted the blimp in flight and reported it appeared to be under control, not drifting like an unmanned balloon. If the men were gone, how was the ship maneuvering itself? There was another clue the Navy could not easily explain. The cabin door. It wasn't just open, it was locked open, secured by an external latch. For a man to fall by accident or even jump, someone would have had to latch that door from the outside. But once outside, how could it be locked? This single detail seemed to rule out the Navy's accident explanation. Over the decades, the mystery of the Ghost Blimp has sparked countless theories. Each tries to explain how two experienced airmen could vanish without a trace. In 1942, fears of Japanese submarines along the West Coast were very real. Some believe Cody and Adams discovered more than an oil slick that morning. Could a submarine have surfaced, forcing the men out of their craft at gunpoint? Could they have been taken captive, their blimp released to drift ashore? The idea was plausible, but no evidence ever surfaced. Post-war interrogations of Japanese naval officers produced no mention of captured American blimp crews. And why would enemy forces leave the airship completely intact, with documents inside? Still, for some, this remains the most chilling possibility. The men did see a submarine that morning, and it saw them too. Another theory is darker and more personal. Some speculate the two men argued. Perhaps it turned violent. In the struggle, one or both fell from the gondola. The locked door could, in this view, be explained as part of a desperate fight. But this theory runs into problems. Investigators found no signs of violence inside the cabin. No blood, no damage, no scuffs or broken instruments. And those who knew Cody and Adams said the men respected each other. Both were steady, reliable officers with no history of conflict. If a fight happened, it left no trace behind. Could the men have chosen to disappear? Perhaps they wanted to abandon their posts, to escape the war, to vanish into civilian life under assumed identities. But this idea raises more questions than answers. If they meant to desert, why leave behind their parachutes, their raft, their documents? And how could two men slip away in the middle of the Pacific without being seen? The desertion theory is tantalizing, men running from war, but it offers little in the way of practical explanation. One of the more unusual theories came decades later from amateur investigator Otto Gross. Gross believed the L-8 was secretly carrying experimental radar equipment, powerful microwave technology being tested by the Navy. He claimed declassified files hinted at such experiments. According to this idea, the equipment malfunctioned. Intense radiation may have disoriented or incapacitated the crew, causing them to stumble out of the gondola. It would explain the lack of distress calls, the lack of struggle, and the sudden disappearance. But no solid evidence of this equipment on L-8 has ever been proven. Still, the theory remains a favorite among those who suspect the truth was hidden for reasons of secrecy. Theories aside, the character of the missing men adds to the puzzle. Lieutenant Cody was a family man. Friends described him as calm, dependable, the kind of pilot who followed the rules and kept his head in a crisis. Ensign Adams was a hero. At the Hindenburg disaster in 1937, he rushed toward the flames, helping passengers escape the burning wreckage. His bravery was publicly recognized. He was also one of the Navy's most seasoned blimp men. These were not men likely to make careless mistakes. Their disappearance feels out of step with the lives they lived. Incredibly, the L-8 itself didn't end with the mystery. The Navy repaired the airship and returned it to service. For the rest of World War II, it carried out training missions. After the war, it was sold back to its original owner, Goodyear. In 1968, its gondola was fitted to a new commercial blimp named America. For years, the very same gondola that once held two missing men drifted above football games, parades, and public celebrations. To the public, it was a cheerful icon. Few knew its dark history. The airship was finally retired in 1982. In 1943, with no evidence ever found, the Navy declared Cody and Adams dead. Their bodies were never recovered. Their families never received answers. The case was closed. But the questions were not. For nearly a century, the mystery has lingered. The blimp came back, but its crew did not. To this day, the fate of Lieutenant Cody and Ensign Adams remains unsolved. The L-8 drifts not only through the skies of history, but through the shadows of unanswered questions. And the silence of its empty gondola still echoes the same haunting riddle. Where did the men of the Ghost Blimp go?